Dear Queenagers, I'm doing this again because lots of you liked it last week. So this is the Queenager with me, Eleanor Mills, and this is the audio and video version. So this is the Queenager, January the 25th, 2026. Dear Queenagers, over the past few weeks, I've been writing about wintering and planifestation and the importance of nourishing our friendships across generations. All important, for sure. But I feel I've been avoiding talking about the elephant in the room, the cataclysmic thundering of world catastrophe that is echoing around all of us. Yeah, that. I've been a journalist all my adult life. My job has been to devour news sources, to wonder where it's all going and what it means. For nearly 2 decades, I edited the news review section of our biggest national broadsheet. My brief was to look at the news and say, this is important because, and then get great commentators to write about it. After 9/11, for instance, I commissioned Andrew Sullivan to write a review front page story entitled, Why Do They Hate America? My role was to have a finger on the pulse, to help everyone have a context to understand what was unfolding. That was my job for nearly 2 decades. This week marks a year of Donald Trump's second term in the White House. This month, it's 6 years since his supporters marched on the citadel of American democracy, the Capitol building, a true first in all of our lifetimes. Since the beginning of 2026, we've seen the shooting of an innocent bystander in Minneapolis by Trump's ICE teams, Iran on the brink of another revolution with again America threatening to get involved, the kidnapping of a president in Venezuela, and then, surreally, Trump deciding he wants to buy or invade Greenland. A move that threatens the underpinnings of the post-Second World War deal, which has underpinned European security via NATO. At Davos last week, numerous European leaders, including Emmanuel Macron and his natty blue shades, were talking about whether they could trust America to be there for them anymore, and that they were considering firing their big economic bazooka, which could also unleash financial Armageddon. Any one of these events would have been unthinkable in the era when I was editing. To have a series of weeks, often only days, when all of it cascades into our news feeds and nervous systems is truly unprecedented. In my journalistic bones, I feel a sense of a tectonic shift. And despite Mark Carney popping up at Davos and being more positive, the overwhelming feeling from people who were there, who I've been speaking to, was that it was really pretty pessimistic and all our world leaders are really pretty worried. It makes me feel not exactly old, but as if the world that we all grew up in is vanishing in front of our eyes, that our certainties will not be there for our children. I've had my kids home actually over the last kind of month or so from university, so I had this exact conversation with my 20-year-old daughter this past week. I said, how does it feel to be a millennial, Gen Z growing up in all of this? Her response was that the combination of world instability plus climate change plus internet extremism with the algorithm eroding the centre ground constantly was indeed scary. Her generation, she explained, tend to be in one of 2 camps, either what she called oblivious and in denial, or, quote, damn worried and committed to doing something about it. I see that in the Gen Zs who throng through my house, and there's been a lot of those over the Christmas period. What I also see is that a significant number of my friends' offspring are going to live off-grid, taking sustainability courses in places like Wales, joining XR, and generally preparing for a very different future. I don't remember any of us doing that. In fact, I think our generation were really quite asleep on that watch. Many of them say they don't want to bring children into the world as it is. They've lost faith in the current system and don't see how, even if they work hard, they'll end up with the kind of lives, jobs and houses our generation has sustained. There's an increasing sense of polarisation between those who can be helped on their way, with parents who can provide a house deposit, for instance, or contacts to get them into careers, and those Gen Zs who are applying for thousands of jobs post-university and even when they have good degrees, are just getting nowhere. One of my pals the other day was thrilled that her 23-year-old son, who's a graduate, had got a job as an Ocado delivery driver. It's tough out there for the Gen Zs. It's also tough for many Queenagers. We see in our community many women who are feeling they'll never be able to retire, that for a myriad of reasons they'll be working till they drop to pay the bills. When we women do retire, it's on average with a gender pension deficit of 35%, often because of caring responsibilities, so we've taken time out from our careers. And though some of us have decent pensions from years of working for corporates, the majority do not. And that particularly affects women because we live longer. Added to that financial anxiety is the bigger worry that the world we know is ceasing to function right in front of our eyes. Last week at the Noon Circle in London, one of you told me you just bought a book called How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It, a handbook described by Reuters as the Prepper's Bible, written by a former US Army intelligence officer, all about things including food storage, communications and gardening for self-sufficiency. He's advised Fortune 500 executives, clergy and of course entrepreneurs. I saw how quickly the shops ran out of stuff during COVID and how fragile supply chains are. My reaction to the scary state of the world is to work out what I can do personally to prepare myself in case of the worst, the woman said. Yes, and that sounds a bit prepper, but it's made me feel a bit better buying that book. She's also saying she's going to buy a wind-up radio. And another friend of mine last night was talking about how she wants to create kind of places where her family might all meet up if all the communications went down. I mean, I really can't remember ever having those kind of conversations with friends. There really is a sense at the moment of things shifting really quickly and people being really worried about it. Personally, I'm not stocking up on wind-up radios and dried food rations. The prepper industry is forecasted to be worth $2.46 billion by 2030 by the US magazine Newsweek. But I get the motivation behind that impulse. As someone's been a news junkie for 3 decades, I see that the UK press also has never been so politically polarised. It's also increasingly sensationalist, just at a time when the rapid mayhem and news cycle means we need calm, measured, factual reporting more than ever. But here's what we're getting. So just, this is just as I was writing the newsletter, I was looking at my phone and it said, the Telegraph headline today was Trump's imperial delirium could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. And then on the other side of the political spectrum, Carol Cadwallader's new publication, The Nerve, which is, definitely to the left. She's the incredible journalist who's really taken on a lot of the kind of what she called the broligarchs. Anyway, she was saying Trump's dictatorship is almost complete. And there was an accompanying article about how European governments need to wake up and how Trump is increasingly using Nazi references and right memes, far-right memes even. And then, The Economist, where one might look for some kind of, more centrist or sensible reaction, that also said Trump's expansionist itch has undermined global security. So it's not as if this is just coming from kind of polarised news sources. There's a drumbeat out there everywhere that we're really in unprecedented times. Wherever you look, that drumbeat of anxiety is the same. But I suppose the question is, what should we do about it? One way I'm dealing with the chaos in the world is by severely limiting my current affairs intake. It's a bit like during COVID. Listening to too much of it makes me physically anxious. I can feel my kind of heart beating. And so I think it's better to limit my exposure and then to limit the kind of the amount of that kind of free-floating anxiety that too much news feeds can provoke. I think this is not the time for endless kind of doom scrolling on news websites. I really don't. That's not to say that I don't want to know what's going on. I have subscriptions to the New York Times and the Telegraph and the Guardian and the Nerve, so I get a broad view of what's happening. I think it's better to read a different load of sources than just one. I think then you really get a sense of what's moving in the world. And one of my other real go-tos is The World Tonight on BBC Radio 4, because I like it because it actually gives guests kind of 10 minutes or so to really dig into an issue and explain what's going on rather than just delivering kind of terrifying soundbite headlines. But I also think there's something both bigger and smaller that we can all do during this time. Yes, the fear matrix and the chaos is all too real, but there is also another gentler, kinder, more peaceful reality we can all access to. The one that we drop into when we're intentionally calm, the place we enter when we sit quietly and read a real book, or go for a quiet walk with a friend, or stare at a candle, or walk, or swim, or spend time in nature. I find the solidity of trees that have stood for centuries through endless political crises particularly calming at the moment. I think about how long they've stood there and all that they've seen, and I know there is a different paced reality to the one that bleeps at me through my phone. I also went to see the new David Hockney exhibition yesterday. If you're in London, do pop in. It's free in Hanover Square. And just that kind of burst of colour, I think sometimes art can also help really anchor us in a different kind of reality, one which is kind of brighter or more permanent. So I really think at the moment a good antidote to the craziness of the world is to try and intentionally spend a bit more time in that calm place. I have for the last 5 years now started every day by meditating quietly for about half an hour, dropping into peace with slow, deep breaths. I know meditation's not for everybody, but has shown me some tricks that we can all use. For instance, if you breathe out for longer than you breathe in, it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system and physically calms us down. If you do that for a few breaths, you can really feel your body going into a different state, a kind of calm, soothed state, not one of massive kind of, frustration and anxiety. And if we're frightened and anxious and confused and constantly on edge, it's not good for us. And it's also not good for how we make a difference in the world, whether that's with activism or in the political world or within our individual lives. I really feel at the moment, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, that it feels like there are kind of two parallel systems operating simultaneously, one based in fear, all that kind of Trump kind of craziness matrix, but one based in love as well. And we can influence that. How? Well, each one of us can try and put out into the world as much love as possible, perhaps by practicing random acts of kindness. Try smiling at people in the street. I do that quite a lot. It's amazing the reaction you get back. Or helping someone. I helped someone up the stairs with their shopping the other day and we had a bit of a chat and I really felt that kind of connection in the world. Or maybe actively shift your own behaviour by showing up in a loving, open-hearted way with someone who's been triggering you. I tried this over Christmas and it really worked. We can't change other people, but we can change the way we react. And in a world of intense kind of craziness, actually really thinking about how we're reacting and trying to change that for the better is maybe one thing that we can all do. Or perhaps do some volunteering, or in your own behaviour try and consistently show up as the best of humankind rather than the worst. If we all did that, think about what a massive difference it would make. I suppose in our small way, that is what we're trying to do at Noon. While our intention is to create through our circles and the community and the spaces where we can support and be supported. Places where we can hold each other in this crazy world with love and care and optimism. My meditation teacher says that when we meditate or show up with love, we raise the energetic vibration for everyone. She explains it as being like the centre of a wheel, which stays still and calm while the rest is rotating around. So even if it's not something that's really in your usual box of tricks, maybe just at the moment try being intentionally calm for kind of 20 minutes or 30 minutes and see how that makes you feel. I really like to believe that's true, but what I do know is that intentionally finding some calm and leaning into love rather than fear makes it easier to stay steady and show up with kindness in an increasingly scary world. If you'd like to sample a bit of our Noon serenity and joy, then I'm going to be in Dedham, Essex to kick off our New Colchester Circle on February the 9th. You can book here, there's a link. And we're also launching a Cheshire Circle at lovely Inglewood Manor just outside Chester on February the 4th. On top of that, there's an online circle at 6:30 with me on February the 4th, which is open to all paid members wherever you are. You don't have to get anywhere. So whether you all think the news lately is hyperbolic or that it needs responding to by learning to grow your own food, finding calmness, humanity and love for others inside us is always a good first step. And we've also got one extra spot on the Camino. I thought it was sold out. I'd actually made the calculations wrong. So there's one more spot if you'd like to come. And also, if you fancy a bit of kind of Noon for a whole day or a bit of an extended time, we've just opened up booking for this year's one-day retreats at Wasing. So do check those out. That's a lovely day of kind of yoga and walking and hanging out and fun. And also, I think in these grim grey times, it's nice to have something to look forward to. So thanks so much for listening. I'm glad you enjoy it. Thanks for being kind of part of Noon if you are, or just being interested in this newsletter if you aren't. And I hope that you have a lovely Sunday if you're listening to this on Sunday, or day wherever you are. Thanks. I'm Eleanor. Bye.